Good afternoon, students, and welcome to this session. I hope you're all doing well and exams are going great. Tonight, we will discuss differentiated curriculum as well as lesson planning. Please enter your student numbers in the chat function. Just a moment while I upload my slide, please. Thank you. Students, by the show of hands, tell me, can you see my presentation or not yet? Is my presentation visible? All right, thank you. I'll try again. Just a second, please.
What?
Shanae, can you please put your microphone? Thank you. I can see your screen, Portia.
All right, thank you, Adele. Good day, students. Let us start with lesson planning. All right. Do all of you know how to set up a lesson plan by the show of hands, or you're not sure? All right. See a few hands. All right. Thank you. So please tell me, what is your understanding of a lesson plan, students? Why do we plan? Evelyn, please tell me why. Why do we set up lesson plans? Why do we do planning as teachers? Melissa, what do you think? Why do we plan?
We plan so that we can be prepared for the learners and that we can teach in a meaningful way.
Yes, correct. Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to share with us your idea on planning?
So a lesson plan clearly states what the outcomes of the lesson should be and the assessments that should follow after that to see if the outcomes were achieved or not.
Yes, correct. Thank you very much. Continue. So we plan because the lesson plan is our guide. All right, it is our guide. It guides us as to what to teach learners, when to teach what, the time allocation. All right. So lesson planning then ensures that every bit of class time you get, okay, is spent teaching new concepts and also having meaningful discussions, like Melissa said, and not figuring out what to do, but you're prepared for the learners once they enter your classroom. So what do you think is the importance of a lesson plan, students? We now know that a lesson plan is a teacher's guide, okay? So what is the importance of a lesson plan? How does it help you as a teacher?
It helps you to be fully prepared and students respond to a teacher who they see is prepared for the lesson.
Definitely, definitely. A lesson plan gives us self-confidence, all right? So when you're more prepared for your learners or the class, all right, you will have self-confidence and you will work towards the definite goal then, all right? And it also helps, yes, student? All right, so it helps us with self-confidence. It also helps us with evaluation, all right? This will help you to evaluate your teaching, okay? And then you will also compare it with the objectives you had in mind for a specific lesson. And like I've said, it is your daily guide as a teacher, so it will give you guidance, all right?
Yes.
Student, would you like to add? All right, and a lesson plan also stimulates you as a teacher then, all right, to think in an organized way while busy with the lesson, all right. It will also help you to understand the objectives, all right. So through lesson planning, you as a teacher will be able to understand the objectives of the lesson, and you will be able to make the learners to understand it too. All right. So why do we need lesson planning?
I think we need lesson planning so that it can guide our classroom practices.
All right.
I
Thank you,
also think
student.
it's important because it allows our lessons to go according to plan and we allocate a certain amount of time towards each section to cover and things like that.
All right. Thank you, student. Anyone else would like to add? All right. So like you said, through lesson planning, the subject is properly organized and it keeps you as a teacher informed keeps you as a teacher from thoughtless teaching, and it makes also it creates a proper atmosphere for the learning process as well. So, what is the characteristics of a good lesson plan? Anyone? What do you think? What is the characteristics of a good lesson plan? Tamika, what do you think is good characteristics of a lesson plan?
Ma'am, your slide is visible, so we can literally just see the answers in front of us.
All right, so, but you can add to that. What do you think? All right, as you can see on my slide, it's in written format. All right, and the general importance of a lesson plan, all right, is the general objective that should be clearly defined when you set up your lesson plan. The lesson plan should also relate to suitable teaching methods and the use of it. All right. And also your subject, time, class should also be mentioned in the lesson plan. All right. And important examples should be included in your lesson plan. And then in the lesson planning, the time for each topic should be appropriately be predetermined, all right? And then the lesson planning, the techniques, and as well as the supportive materials, all right, must be included in your lesson plan. And it's important to note that the lesson planning, okay, the lesson planning is a thinking process, all right, and is not just the filling of the lesson plan template, all right. So how will you set your objectives, student? Your objectives, your lesson plan objectives. Akila, please tell me, how will you determine or set up your objectives in your lesson plan? Colleen, what would you say? How will you set up your objectives? Or outline your objectives?
Well, you'll think about what you want the children to concepts to grasp in a lesson, and you will those will be your objectives. What you want to get out of the lesson, what you want the learners to get out of the lesson.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Vicky, would you like to add to that? Evelyn? All right. So it is important to set up your objectives because you have to think of what you are going to teach, how you will teach it, how will you know if learners understood what was said, and who are you going to teach? So that is the questions you must have in mind when you set up your objectives. So the first thing you as a teacher will do is to create an objective, like Colin just said. All right. Um, and this statement, all right, this statement, the objective, it should answer what the learners will be able to do by the end of the lesson. So the objective will drive your whole lesson. All right. So we as teachers must make sure that the objectives of the lesson will determine the activities the learners will engage in. All right. Then we must also make sure that the lesson plan goals are compatible with the developmental level of the learners. All right. So as you can see on my slide, the objective will drive your whole lesson. The outcome of the lesson as to what you want the learners to know, and the objective must determine your learner activities.
Oh, man.
Student, would you like to add? Or can you please switch off your mic? Now, students, how will you select lesson plan materials? We now know the first thing we have to do is to set out an objective for our lesson. So how will you select lesson plan materials?
Probably lesson plan materials that's appropriate to the subject you're teaching and to the age group that you are teaching.
Yes, definitely. And also the tools that you will use depends on the subject and your learner age. All right. So when you select lesson planning materials and tools, it must correlate with a textbook. All right. And it's so important nowadays to make use of technology in our classrooms. So you must make use of technology like projectors, the internet, and it's basically just to create an interesting atmosphere for the learners to make use of technology. All right. So what is the strategies for effective lesson planning? What do you think? What is the strategies for effective lesson planning?
Lessons must engage the learners, so they must be actively involved.
Yes, definitely. We moved from passive learning to active learning, so that's correct. Learners must be actively involved. So the strategies for an effective lesson plan is what you want the learners to learn, what teaching and learning activities you will use during your lesson or after your lesson, and also how you will check whether or not learners understand the concepts explained to them. All right. So, what steps do you think? What steps can we use to prepare for a lesson plan? All right. So this is the steps for preparing a lesson plan. All right. First, you need to outline the learning objectives. You must develop an introduction. You must plan to check for understanding of, and you must develop conclusion and preview, and you must create a realistic timeline. All right. So if we look at outlining the learning objectives, all right, the first step you have to do is to determine what you want your learners to learn and what you'd like them to be able to do at the end of a lesson. So when you out students, can you please mute yourself? All right. So when you outline the learning objective, you must ask yourself questions such as, what is the topic of the lesson? What will my topic be? What do I want the learners to learn? And also ask yourself, what do I want them to understand at the end of the lesson and be able to do after the lesson? And you must also ask yourself, what do I want them to take away from the particular lesson? So once you outlined the learning objectives for the lesson, all right, you must rank them in terms of importance. All right. Then you have to develop, then you need to develop the introduction secondly. Okay. Now that you have your learning objectives in the order of importance, all right. By that, I mean, you will ask yourself, what is the most important concepts or ideas you want the learners to be able to master? Okay. And then you design specific activities that you want the learners to do after the lesson or to apply what they have learned, right? Remember, we have a diverse culture of learners in our classroom. Right? In our classroom with different personal experiences and academic experiences. So they may be, some of them may, student, can you please mute yourself? All right. Remember, we have a diverse group of learners in our classroom with different experiences, and therefore we must choose topics, all right, that they're familiar with, okay, that they're familiar with. And then thirdly, you must plan with the specific learning activities, all right. You must try and make use of real life examples in your classroom. All right. That normally catch the attention of learners, and it also appeals to the different learning styles of learners. Right. So you can ask yourself a few questions. All right. To design the learning, when you design the learning activities for your learners, right? You can ask yourself the question, what will I do to explain the topic, for example? What will I do to illustrate the topic? How will I illustrate the topics in different ways? How can I get the learners engaged in the topic, and what will the learners need to do to help them to understand the topic better. All right, so that's all part of how you plan specific learning activities for the learners. Then fourthly, you must plan to check for understanding. So how do we plan to check for understanding? After you have explained your topic and illustrated it with different examples in the class, you need to check for learners understanding then. And how do we do that? We ask questions in class after the lesson or during the lesson. You can ask questions to see whether or not the learners understood the lesson. Learners can write down their own understanding of the topic, and you can also ask them to respond verbally as well when you do check for understanding. Right. So then you have, fifthly, you need to develop your conclusion and preview. Okay. What we normally do during this stage is that we go over the material that we've covered in the class. And how do we do that? We do that by summarizing the main points in the lesson. All right. So that has to do with the conclusion and preview. And lastly, it's important for you to create a realistic timeline for your lesson planning. All right. Yeah, it depends on what learners need. All right. And there's a few strategies you can use for creating a realistic timeline. You can estimate how much time, okay, it will take you to go through activities in classroom. Okay, so when you prepare your lesson, okay, indicate how much time it will take you to conclude a specific lesson or topic. All right.
Are you done with this exam?
And you must also plan for questions after sessions, all right, or after your lessons. You have, student, can you please mute your mic? Thank you. And then you as a teacher also need to be flexible, all right? You must be ready to adjust your lesson plan to the student according to the student or the learner's needs, all right? Because remember, your lesson plan is your working document. You may write on it. You may change it from time to time. All right. Then, how will we? Then we have to present the lesson. All right. Then lastly, you have to present the lesson. All right. Are you all still with me, or was any questions? Colin, you good? Akila?
All good, thanks.
All right. So that was how you need to prepare your lesson plan. All right. How you prepare for your lesson plan. So in conclusion, please note that lesson planning is very important because it guides you as a teacher as to what to teach, and it will allocate you the time frame. First of all, firstly, you need to identify your objective, because your objective will drive your lesson, will drive your lessons. All right. And it's important to know the steps for preparing a lesson. First, you need to outline the learning objectives. You need to develop your introduction. You need to plan specific learning activities. So that will be part of your body when you plan the learning activities. And you need to plan to check for understanding. You must develop your conclusion and preview. And lastly, you need to create a realistic timeline. All right. So plan wise for quality and effective teaching. Students, can we just take 5-minute break and be back here, say 6:10, then we can start with differentiating assessments. Right. Thank you.
Perfect.
Students, by the show of hands, please indicate if you're in the session. Back in the session. All right. Thank you. Let's start. All right. Differentiated assessment. Student, before we continue, please tell me why do you think, why do we assess? Why do we do assessments?
We assess to collect, analyze, and interpret info so we can make decisions about the learner's progress and where we need to work on and their challenges and weaknesses.
All right, thank you. Anyone else would like to add to that? Ursula, would you like to add to that? Why do we assess? Ilse? Yes, I'm listening.
We assess to create criteria for the selection of candidates and to see if our standards and our program quality is up to standard. Yes, and to recognize previous learning materials.
All right, thank you. Correct. Ilse, what do you think? What does assessment mean to you? Why do we assess?
I think we do assessment to improve the progress of the learners and help them to gain more knowledge in the process of the learning, ma'am.
Yes, definitely. That's part of it. Yes, correct. So we assess to improve our teaching methodologies as teachers. All right. We also assess learners to keep track of the learners' development stages. And it also helps us to determine the most effective teaching approach. We do assessment. Student, can you please mute yourself? All right. We also do assessments to motivate learners, all right, because it challenges them to make a plan for improvement once they see their results. All right. It will also help the learners to understand their own strengths and weaknesses. And by assessing learners, it will also inform the parents of the child's progress. All right. So we assess to learn to evaluate effectiveness of teaching for all learners. And like I've said, to identify the learner's strengths and weaknesses or needs, and also to evaluate the learners, whether or not the learners achieve what we want them to achieve. Okay, so a differentiated curriculum, all right? It is very important in terms of assessment, all right, and to the teaching and learning process as a whole. Now with differentiated instruction, all right, differentiated assessment is based on the thinking, okay, that the needs of learners cannot all be met in the same way, all right. Therefore, we differentiate our assessments to meet the needs of all learners, right? So what do you think is the key principles for assessment, students? What do you think is the key principles for assessment? Remember, when we assess, we must assess all the learners on their level of understanding.
Ma'am, is it the general principles of assessment, for example, valid, fair, reliable, flexible? Is it those?
Yes, of course, that is the principles for assessment. Thank you. Anyone else would like to add to the principles for assessment? Danae, are you here? Would you like to add to that? All right. So the principles for assessment is in the diverse classroom is to include all the learners in the classroom. All right. And it must be relevant. It must also be integrated in the teaching and learning process. All right. So you must be able to accommodate all learners in terms of the differentiated assessment strategies you're going to use. All right. So what do we actually assess, students? We now know what assessment is and why we assess, and the main purpose of assessment and the principles of assessments. So what do we assess?
The learner's abilities.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Anyone else would like to add to that? Because more to that as to why we assess, as to what we assess. Anyone?
Perhaps
I
where
think
Yes, student? Colin? Why do we assess? What do we assess?
we also assess if they need any extra assistance, if they're struggling with tasks.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Next student. What would you like to add?
we also assess ourselves to see if the way we taught actually came through to the students and if they can recall what we did.
Definitely. Thank you. Let's continue. All right. So we assess to find out about the readiness and the learner's pre-skills. All right. We assess the progress with the curriculum. We assess the learner's interests, and we also assess the learner's characteristics. So let's just look at assessing to find out about the readiness and the learner's pre-skills. All right. Here we will tap into their prior knowledge or the experiences they had. We will also find out at what level of readiness the learners is. We will also find out if there's any missing skills or understandings that they need to learn. All right. And we will also be able to see if they mastered the previous grade's work. All right. Let's move on to assessing progress with the curriculum. All right. Here we will look at what learners have been taught. All right. We will also be able to determine where to start with the learners. We will also be able to apply facts and concepts or the skills that they've learned in the previous grade. All right. We will assess also for learners' interest. Okay. Here you will find out whether or not the learner showed interest in the topics you've presented or the subject area. If they're interested, they will share their interests and ideas with others in the classroom. And you will also notice that learners will engage in the lesson and the lesson activities if they're interested in a certain topic or subject area. All right. So we also assess for learner characteristics. All right. Here we will look at the different learning styles of learners. All right. You will quickly find out if it works best to teach a class as a whole or to do group work with learners or pair work, for example. Right? You will also notice that you will start pacing your instruction methods and your lessons according to the learner's space. All right. So what is a differentiated assessment? Now we know what to assess, how we do assessment. So what is a differentiated assessment, students? Remember, we working with students or learners in our classrooms with different cognitive levels of functioning. All right. You for example get the 3 levels of functioning: the high level of functioning, the moderate level of functioning, and the low level of functioning. So what do you think? What is a differentiated assessment?
It's an assessment that caters for all children, all learners in your class, inclusive assessment. So it caters for them on their different levels and their different learning styles.
Right, yes. All learners will do the same assessment task, but just in different ways. All right. So here, teachers must adopt a new way of thinking. All right. So why differentiated assessment then?
Because it basically caters for diverse learning.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. So the differentiated assessment then will enable the learners of various abilities, and with different experiences to best demonstrate what they know. All right. So the differentiated assessment will enable the learners with the different cognitive abilities and different experiences to demonstrate best what they know. Right? So how do we differentiate assessments? All right. We plan. We make use of differentiated instruction as well as differentiated assessment. All right. Over time, we as teachers get to know our learners in the classroom. All right. As well as the learner differences. So the goal then is to meet the learners where they are and to help the learners to progress to the next grade. All right. Thus, as you can see, this is a process that we follow. We plan, and that leads to differentiated instructions. From there, we differentiate the assessments. So it's a cycle we're creating. So there's certain procedures that we as teacher can follow in this differentiating assessments. All right. We must design assessment tasks for the different learning styles or the intelligences in our classroom, right? We must allow for group assessment tasks. We must also give them multiple choice options when we set up a differentiated assessment. We must also allow learners extra time to complete the task. And remember, we must vary the assessment activities. All right, so we as teachers need to design the assessment according to the learner's learning styles. We must pace the assessment activities, and we must allow for assessment of accommodation. That is now to give the learners more time for completing assessments if necessary. This will also include, say for example, the learner can't read or write. That will include reader and scribes that's available to the learner. All right. And like I've said, you must give extra time to learners with learning barriers. Right. So there are 3 alternative forms for learners with learning barriers. All right. The first one is the alternative assessment based on the alternative attainment of knowledge. All right. The second one is the alternative assessment based on modified attainment of knowledge. Third one is the alternative assessment based on grade level attainment of knowledge. But here you have to keep in mind the content remains the same, the concepts remain the same, as well as the skills. All right. This is just the different ways to assess learners with learning barriers. All right. Let's just look at the first one, the alternate assessment based on the alternate attainment of knowledge. Okay. This is for learners with cognitive disabilities. All right. So their assessments will be based on grade level content. All right. And that is normally covered by the general assessment. All right. But it must be at a reduced depth. All right. It must be less complex for them to complete the assessment. So the target learners here can include learners with intellectual disability, and these type of learners we normally enroll in a special school, or we apply for them at the School of Skills. Remember, this is for the learners with cognitive disabilities. So we will apply for them at special schools or at School of Skills. Now, if we look at the second alternative, all right, that is alternate assessment based on modified attainment of knowledge. All right. So this is for learners with disabilities. All right. They are working on grade level content that also covered in the general assessments. All right. But because of their disabilities, they may require more time to master the content, to understand the content. All right. And this type of assessment will measure what the learner mastered on the grade level content. All right. And again, within a reduced load or at a more functional level. All right. So the targeted learners here can include your learners with moderate intellectual disability. All right. This will include learners with hearing problems. All right. As well as learners with sight problems. So that is for the second type of assessment. Now, let's look at alternative assessment based on the grade level. All right. Attainment of knowledge. This again is for the learners with disabilities or learning difficulties. All right. Learners with learning difficulties. And we also test them on with regards to the general assessment standards. All right. The target of learners here will include learners with speech difficulty, physical disabilities, learners with hearing loss, and who need additional time. All right. We make use of alternative formats here for the learners to complete their assessments. All right. We can get in readers, we can get in scribes for them. We can make use of electronic equipment. All right. Now, the three types of alternative assessments, all right, it is available, or it should be available at all schools. Okay. Should be available at all schools. Teachers will be trained as to how to do these assessments with learners. All right. Students, tell me, you still all with me, or do you have a question for me on this slide?
Ma'am, I have a question. Could you
Yes.
possibly tell us where in our study guides we could find this that you have on your slide right now?
All right. This we do in practice. All right. That is the skills you need in practice. Does that answer your question?
No, not actually. I was wondering
this
if you
is
could
not in the study
perhaps.
guide.
Okay,
Yeah.
so where is it then?
All right. This is what we use in practice. This is a different forms of assessment, alternative forms of assessment for learners with learning barriers.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
All right. Any other questions? Colin, are you good with it? Akila, Tamika, Vicky? Melissa, are you good with it?
Yes, thanks, ma'am.
All right. Colleen, Evelyn?
All good, thanks.
All right. All right. So that brings us to the last point. Lastly, we have to record the assessment. We have to record it, we have to analyze it, and we must report on the results. Okay. So for those of you that's at school, how do you do your recordings of the assessment? This is now after everything's been marked and after the assessments are done. So how will you go about doing your recordings? Anyone? All right. You will have a recording sheet where you type in all the learners' marks. All right. Where you type in all the learners' marks, and that we will get from the baseline assessment we do at the beginning of the year. All right. That will help us identify the learners' previous learning and knowledge. And we will also obtain these marks from formative assessments. All right. Tell me, what is a formative assessment again?
It's feedback for students during the daily classroom and about the teaching events, so you can improve the learning by giving feedback on their progress.
All right, good. Thank you. Anyone like to add to that? Ursula, would you like to add to that?
It is also the developmental that is used to track learners' progress.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
Sorry, it
Yes.
helps teachers to make decisions about the next learning milestones, and it creates an opportunity for learners to get more practice and engage within the classroom.
Right. Great. I like that. Anyone else like to add?
It also involves the teacher and the learner in a process of sustained reflection and self-assessment.
Good. Yes, definitely. So there you have it. That's a formative assessment and the baseline assessment where we get our marks from and we record it. All right. And we record it, and then we will analyze it to see whether or not we've met our goal, and then we will report. We will report back on the results. That is where we will reflect on what we can do differently and how can we improve our teaching methods. Yes, anyone else would like to add to this slide? All right, so it's important for you to know what differentiated assessment means, the key principles for assessment in a diverse classroom, also what you need to assess or what you assess, as well as differentiated assessment is important and how to differentiate the assessments. All right. That note, I'd like to say thank you to you all for joining me tonight. So remember, we have to change our attitudes, our behaviors, our teaching methods, and the curricula and environments, all right, so that we can meet the needs of all learners. All right. Thank you very much, students. Any questions for me?
Ma'am, will you be uploading the slides and the recording of the session again?
Yes, definitely.
I am sending them within the next 3 seconds to your My Life email addresses.
Thank you, Adele.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Any questions, students? Are you all good?
All good, thanks.
All right. Nomfundo, you good? Melissa? Ursula, any questions? Rafika?
Now I'm good. I'm just looking for the feedback form. I can't find it.
All right. Adele?
Yes, Portia?
Yes, tell me, are you going to paste the feedback form in the chat as well?
Yes, please. Yes, yes, I'll do that immediately.
All right. Thank you,
Please,
Adele.
I have the feedback form. Thank you for reminding me.
All right. Pleasure.
Izzy, can I just ask a question?
Yes, you may.
I'd just like to know if we are able to access the previous meetings because I wasn't able to join the previous meetings. So is there a recording that we can find on my UNISA or?
Yes, you will be able to find all the recordings. I will post that link here in the chat, and I will send the link to all the students who were in this session tonight via email. I'll do that within the next minutes. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Shana, your hand is up.
Is this the last session, or are you having another session on Monday?
They're writing on Saturday, am I right?
Yes, Saturday.
Yes, on Saturday.
All right.
Oh, yes. Can we get some more clarity on Saturday's examination? Are we just going to have 2.5 hours to answer, or what? Because I saw that the portal is going to be open from 8 until 2.
Yeah, we all get 2.5 hours.
Sorry, say that again, please.
All get 2.5 hours, and you have to go on at a specific time according to the letter that is next to your name under the My UNISA exams portal or something.
Okay, so we're only getting confirmation on our specified times that we're writing by tomorrow.
Yes, apparently they're sending out SMSs to say whatever your letter is, they will give you the time that you will then be writing for your 2.5 hours.
Okay, thank you so much for that.
And the information that they are sending via SMS, will that be available to students on My UNISA as well?
I'm not sure. I'm surmising so. That information came through on my UNISA email. So I'm surmising that it will.
Yes, I can't think that they will only send an SMS, because if somebody's has trouble with their phone, they're not going to get the message. So my advice is that you watch SMS, you watch your My Life email, and that you watch My UNISA.
Sorry, Adele. I found the email that they sent to us in this week where they say the time slots for each group will be communicated via SMS and announcements on Friday. So the students just need to watch the SMSs and their My Life emails.
Correct. Yes, and My UNISA as well, under announcements. Okay. Make sure you watch all 3 those resources. Are there any other questions for, did you say you're writing on Saturday?
Yes.
Okay, now, please, for those who weren't in the session last week, just give me a second. Please read the instructions very, very carefully. If they say to you that you have to be online from the moment that you get your question paper, because am I correct in saying this is only MCQs?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so chances are that they will tell you that, and you must read everywhere you can now for any messages, that if you have accessed that question paper, you can't log out and do the questions on the side quickly and log back in and then capture your answers. You will not get the same question paper when you log back in. So don't waste your time with that. With MCQs, and I'm not saying it's going to be the same with yours, I'm saying read the instructions in case they tell you that you have to stay online for that duration of the paper.
We do have to stay online because it's on the My Exams one. So you have to, you can't log off. You have to stay online, and each question comes one at a time.
Okay. Okay. All right.
The Causa paper, every question came one at a time and you had to stay online for the whole time. This one is going to be the same.
Okay. Have you all heard that, ladies and gentlemen? There was a huge hoo-ha and people wanted to go to the Ombudsman earlier in the week. So please don't make that mistake. Even if something distracts you, do not log out. Rather miss the questions. Make sure that you take your body breaks before you start that paper, or you have to take your device with you to the bathroom. Okay, be very mindful of MCQs. And remember, Portia also spoke about MCQs last week. MCQs are not there to try and catch you about what you don't know. MCQs are there to test how diligently you can read each word in a question. And what they will do is that they will sometimes give you information that you can, but all three of these options are correct. If they don't tell you all three is correct, be very careful. If all three are correct, don't think they could all three be correct. Be very, very careful with MCQs. Sometimes students prefer written answers rather than MCQs because you have to think. And if you don't know your work, you're going to struggle with MCQs. So please, you've got 2 days left. Put everything into studying because this is a very important module for your qualification and for being a teacher. Are there any other questions at this point in time?
Sorry, ma'am, I wanted to ask if what if the network is bad and then the system kicks you off?
Look, my advice is that you look for a place where you think you will have the best reception. If anything happens, and some students will already know this, if anything happens that your exam is interrupted, you make sure that you take screenshots, or you can even take a picture of your screen with your camera. But what you do immediately is you send an email to your lecturer, because what you won't know at that point in time is, are you the only person? So is it a UNISA issue, or is it a reception in your area issue? You send an email to your lecturer immediately with as much evidence that you've been online and any other evidence that you could later get that there was a power interruption or whatever, you can send that too. We are aware that that happens, and they are very sympathetic towards that, but do not take a chance by using that as an excuse.
Yes, ma'am.
The most important thing is not to stress. You must not stress. If that happens or you struggle to log in, don't stress. Send an email immediately to a lecturer. If you struggle to log on or you are confused as to where you should be, then you can send me a WhatsApp. I'm going to give you my cell phone number. It's 082 525 3907. If you struggle to log on and you think that you're not on the right site, now remember somebody already said that you must be on the My UNISA site. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes.
My exams.
So,
My exams portal.
yes,
My exam.
and not on one of those other links that they normally also provide. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
On the My Exam site. Okay. Now, if you struggle,
Oh,
what time are you writing from 8 to 2? Okay. Yes.
So when we log on into my exams, so am I going to see my group that I can get in for my examination?
Yes, you have to log on to the My Exams UNISA, and it'll say next to your BTE2601, it'll give you a letter next to it, and that is the letter that will tell you at what time you're writing your exam.
Okay, thanks. Thanks so much.
Are we all clear on that? Is there anybody who wants to ask a question on that? Now is your opportunity. Are there many of you whom this is the last module that you're writing now?
Yes, this is the last one.
Yes.
Okay, so you will celebrate on Saturday evening. Okay, now just the last thing. If you are waiting for results and you want to register for other modules, if you are unsure about whether you should wait for your results or can you register, my advice is always try and register. Because very often they allow you, even though you think, but I first, if this is, say, for instance, a requirement that you have to first pass this subject before you can register for the next level, you can still try and register, because what often happens is the system allows you to register for your next level, but once you receive your results, then it might just and say, for instance, you haven't passed, then it will just cancel that other module, because you have to then either write a supplementary or whatever. But don't think that you cannot register. Try and register. Remember, you must register on the website. You guys must now all register on My UNISA. Are we all clear on that?
Yes.
If there are any other struggles, then you can phone me on that cell phone number, okay? But good luck with the exam. Already sent your documents.
Thank you, Adele.
Pleasure.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Adele. Bye.
Pleasure.
Thank you,
Bye.
students.
Thank you.
And good luck with the exams and studies.
Thank